Well, welcome back to Cattle Call. I'm Susan Littlefield, and joining us today is going to be Brad Kooima. He's with Kooima and Barlick out of Sioux Center, Iowa, as we look at the fund liquidation versus good fundamentals. The election, obviously, it's had a hold. We talked about that from a grain perspective earlier in the week, but what about from the livestock side? Is the stock market really even worried about this election? How does that then translate to our livestock and weights? And I guess more importantly, are we even current when it comes to those animals moving through the processing facility? So we've got a handful of things to talk about today, Brad. Thanks for joining us. Let's talk about these fund liquidations versus good fundamentals.
Thanks for having me on, Susan. I enjoy it. Well, the market, first of all, I think as sometimes we analysts have this, try to give off this impression that, oh yeah, we knew this was all coming, right? We could see this coming, whatever. There's plenty of days, trust me, where I am surprised at what happens, okay? And this has been a week a little bit like that. There's no way to anticipate what the fund's next move is going to be, right? Actually, my experience would tell me that you're usually better off coattailing them, following them. If the funds are long, go with them. Don't think you're smart enough to figure out where they're going to get out. If they're short, But what we've had this week so far, it is a big drop in open interest in the December cattle, particularly. December cattle has been the weakest month every day this week. Open interest was increased by a larger fund position than we'd had in a little while. Now, was it excessively large? I don't believe so. I think that it was up to maybe about 80,000. I would say it's probably in the low 50s now. The record open interest in a month of cattle is 150 some thousand. So it's not like this is oh my goodness, you've never seen this before. Not like that. But what we've had is the funds doing some selling this week, and you go, well, why? And I think from the dialogue that I'm hearing, at least, Susan, is that some of this fund money, this investment money, wants to take a risk off position. They don't like uncertainty, and the uncertainty that they're talking about, I'm afraid, is the election. So, obviously COVID-19 has created some uncertainty, and there still is uncertainty moving forward. But that seems to be the catalyst behind some liquidation. Now, I would like to hope that we're through most of it, but I don't have the answer to that. It's been 3 pretty big days. Maybe we're through at least this wave of it, I hope.
So how much do you see the election then really weighing on what's happening in the livestock market?
That is a great question. I wished I had a great answer. One of my oldest friends in this business who is on the floor, well, he isn't now because of COVID, but and I talked about that today at length. And I think there's a couple of anomalies, okay? I mean, if we're really worried that a Biden win is super bearish the economy, why is the stock market okay? In fact, the stock market's pretty good. We're not very far from the highs of the move on the S&P. I just was taking a look at the chart. So that market seems to be all right. I know that the worry within the ag deal, and particularly the cattle deal, is that if the next president decides that we need to be more aggressive with our COVID-19 response, like a shutdown again, like a complete shutdown, that we lose a little bit of restaurant trade we have, that we stop the whole presses again, and so there's that worry, I think, of that uncertainty. Now, the polls all suggest that Biden's going to win. And if people are selling it because that's what they think, is that not maybe built in? That's what I'm wondering, So what if lightning strikes again like it did in 2016? I can remember I was combining at 10 o'clock at night with the radio on, going like, you got to be kidding me. And I'm watching this thing, what the S&P futures are doing, going like, well, wow. And so, yeah, the polls suggested then that Trump was going to lose too. So I have no idea. This is above my pay grade, but I do think that a lot of that what if worry is built in. Now, maybe not all of it. And even then, Is something going to change in the next 30 days, even if we do get a change in administration? I would hope not. We're not at a big price. I know a couple of weeks ago, you and I talked about there's 3 times recently in history that we've been below 100, and they all had very good reasons, like a fire, like COVID, right? So we're not at a big price. I'd like to think we can work our way up out of here because the fundamentals aren't too bad.
So why are we continuing to see some, especially this week, lower prices on these cash cattle?
That's disappointing, and that's not what I was expecting either. I think that the lower cash prices, Susan, are influenced by a poor futures market, which influences the basis traders, the hedgers that are in the South predominantly, to be a little more willing and easy sellers than they would have otherwise. Now, the North, to be fair, has a few big cattle. Overwhelmingly so, unusually so? No, I do not believe it. This is the time of year where we have a handful of these long-fed calves that guy falls in love with and can't get rid of them. They lose money. I get it. I got them too. So they're hard to sell. For some guys, unfortunately, this is kind of like their last go-round, maybe even. It's like, well, this is it. The bank's shutting me off. So he maybe has a little less passion for getting these things sold on a timely basis. And the weather's been great. The cattle, despite the wind, they don't bother them. But the milder weather, the cattle have really performed good. So we've got a few big cattle. So yeah, I thought too that we would get 110 this week. Where the South got 109. There's some 108 trade today now. But one thing that I would mention with this cash thing, though, Susan, if I could, I'm sorry, going on and on here today, but last week and this week, for the first time in months, we have had some exporting of cattle from the north to the south, not the other way around. The COVID deal, we had cattle from Texas getting killed at Dakota City, right? And now we're seeing cattle moving to packers that typically would want to kill high choice and prime cattle. So those packers haven't had to be up here for a while because they've had all kinds of those kind of cattle down there because they were overfed, because they couldn't get them dead. Now you have the grade declining, and that's statistically provable, USDA numbers, where there's more selects, less prime, less choice, would tell me we're getting much more current, especially in the South. And now the South packers coming up here to borrow a few of ours to help his grade. That's a very positive sign. Now, does that mean it goes limit up tomorrow? Of course not, but that's one of those rocks in the bucket, the bullish bucket that says, well, that's something that we all ought to be sensitive to. I'd love to see our weights drop off a little bit. I'd like to see us clean up a few big cattle in the north, but I just cannot be negative this time of year at this kind of price.
All right, lots that we've talked about today. Thanks so much for joining us for this week's Cattle Call, Brad.
Thank you.
All right, that's been Brad Kooima, and that's Cattle Call for this week. I'm Susan Littlefield.